We shall begin today with chanting, and everyone is invited to participate in the practice of listening. The monastics are going to chant the name of Avalokiteshvara, the name of a person who knows how to listen to the suffering within himself and the suffering in the world. And this is a very deep practice. If you know how to go back to yourself and listen to the suffering inside, you can get enlightenment. Understanding and compassion will arise from that kind of practice. You understand your suffering. You understand the suffering of your father, your mother, your ancestors. You understand the suffering of your people, your country. You understand the suffering of the earth, of our society. And understanding like that will help love and compassion to arise. And when compassion arises, you suffer less right away. There is a transformation and healing taking place when compassion is born in your heart. And now you can look at the other person with compassion. You don't suffer anymore when you look at him or her, because you can see the suffering in that person. You don't blame, you are not angry at him or her anymore, because in your heart there is already compassion. So instead of trying to punish him, you have the intention to do something or to say something to help the other person suffer less. And you can listen to that person with compassion. You can say things that can help him suffer less, that can make her suffer less. You can do many wonderful things like that, just because you are able to understand your own suffering. And understanding your own suffering, you can understand the suffering of the other person much more easily. So Avalokita is the kind of bodhisattva that is specialized on listening. First he goes back to himself and listens to the suffering inside of him. And when listening to the suffering inside, he can understand the suffering of his parents, his ancestors, and at the same time he can understand the suffering of other people in society. And this is a very important practice because many of us do not want to listen to our own suffering. That is why we do not have a chance. So today's chanting is to chant and to touch the suffering inside, so that you can allow compassion to arise, so that you can understand the suffering of the world, of your parents, of your ancestors. When the monastics chant the name Avalokiteshvara for the first time, they go back to themselves and try to touch the suffering inside of them. And when they chant the name for the second time, they become aware of the suffering of the people around them. And when they chant it for the third time, they get in touch with the suffering in the world. There is many spots in the world where people suffer very deeply. Not only because of war, because of separation, of natural catastrophes, but they suffer also for social injustice, for suppression, for violence, because of violence and so on. And they suffer from difficult relationship and so on. So the practice of listening to the suffering is to give a chance for compassion to arise. And when compassion arises, you feel better, you suffer less. And it can happen very quickly. That is the practice of mindfulness of suffering. You are mindful of your own suffering. You are mindful of the suffering of the other person. You are mindful of the suffering of the world. Mindfulness of suffering will bring compassion and understanding. So when we sit and listen, we can do very much the same. You don't have to chant along. We follow our in breath and out breath, and we go back to ourselves. We are not afraid of being in touch with the suffering inside. We allowed ourselves to embrace our own suffering. Oh my dear pain, my dear suffering, my dear sorrow, I know you are there. I'm not running away from you anymore. I'm back to recognize you and to embrace you like to embrace a baby. That is what we practice. We go home and allowed ourselves to be embraced, allowed our suffering to be embraced by ourselves. We take care of ourselves. And then when we hear the chanting for the second time, we are aware that people around us, they have suffering also. So we have sympathy. We can communicate with them. And then when we hear the chanting for the third time, we know that in the world people suffer very much. And we want to be in communication with them. We want to be something, to do something in order to help the world to suffer less. And the practice is to allow ourselves to be here, not to be taken away, pulled away by our thinking. Because if we sit there thinking, our thinking will bring us elsewhere. And that is why it's very important to stop the thinking. Just to focus our attention on the chanting. And you are with the chanting. You are breathing in, breathing out. And you stay with the chanting. So there is only the breathing in, breathing out, and the chanting. And our mind can stop thinking. We just feel the energy, the collective energy of the Sangha, the energy of mindfulness, the energy of compassion generated by the chanting. And we allow our body to be relaxed, to be open, so that the collective energy of the Sangha can penetrate into our body. This is very important. Not to think, just to feel. Open our body and allow the energy of mindfulness and compassion to penetrate into our body. And we can do that. And if we can do that, then a few minutes later, there could be a change. Our tension, the tension in our body, the pain in our body, will go away. Because we allowed our body and our mind to be embraced by the collective energy of mindfulness, of compassion generated by the chanting. Chanting is not exactly to pray, no. Chanting is to touch the suffering, to allow compassion and understanding to arise. And when we do that together, the collective energy of compassion and mindfulness will be great. And if we sit there, allow ourselves to be embraced by that energy, we will suffer less in a few minutes. There is tension and pain in our body. And if we allow our body to be embraced by the energy of mindfulness and compassion, we can release the tension and reduce the pain very easily in just a few minutes, and we will feel much better after a few minutes of listening, feeling, and not thinking. And if we have some pain and sorrow or anger or fear in our heart, try to open our heart so that the energy of the Sangha can penetrate into our heart. Don't keep it for yourself. Open and allow the energy of Sangha to penetrate and to help embrace the pain, the sorrow, the fear, the anger in you. Dear Sangha, I am here. I have pain, suffering, fear, and despair in me. Please help embrace these blocks of pain in me. I entrust myself to the Sangha. So if you can open your heart and allow the energy of the Sangha to penetrate and embrace your pain and your sorrow, you will feel better after a few minutes of listening. This is the problem of energy. The energy of suffering, of fear, of anger is being embraced by the energy of mindfulness and compassion. And transformation can happen if you allow your suffering, your fear, your anger to be embraced by the Sangha. Transformation and healing is possible during the time of the practice. And if we have someone very close to us back home who cannot come to the retreat, and that person suffers deeply, we can very well send this energy to him or to her right here and right now. We just think of that person, or call his or her name silently in your mind, and then this energy generated by the practice will be channeled to that person right this morning. And at home, that person may feel better. Avalokiteshvara is a person who knows how to listen to the suffering inside and outside. And he got transformation and healing because of that practice. So we are going to practice like him, the Bodhisattva of deep listening, the Bodhisattva of compassionate listening. And we feel that the Bodhisattva in us is not outside of us, it is in us. He is in us. Because we too, we have the capacity to listen to our own suffering and the suffering of the world. So let us sit relaxingly and practice listening to the chanting.